Hello and welcome to the CNBC Africa special. I'm Aviwa Mtila and I'm at the mother city's Cape Town International Convention Center. It is of course the 19th AfricaCom conference, and tech experts from across the globe are gathered here today to tackle issues of connectivity in Africa and making the continent a digitally vibrant continent. Come with me inside and let's see what AfricaCom has in store for us. AfricaCom is the largest and most influential Africa-focused tech event in the world, the meeting place for those driving Africa's digital transformation. African tech industry players have gathered here in Cape Town for the 2016 AfricaCom conference. Among them is one of the world's leading providers of satellite services, SES. Laurent Petit is the company's head of Africa Commercial and talks to us about steering the continent to becoming a leader in the technological evolution.
Well, AfricaCom is a very important trade show for us. We're a global operator and we're present in Africa. We have several offices in Africa and we have lots of customers that we're very happy to meet here on the occasion of AfricaCom every year in Cape Town. So AfricaCom is definitely a very important trade show, if not the most important for us on the continent.
Talking about the African continent, it is the least connected continent in the world. What are your plans in that regard?
Well, you know, yesterday I was sitting on a panel precisely discussing this, and I've tried to explain, and I think somewhat successfully, that satellite, which is what we're all about, is really an infrastructure that can help with the digitalization of the continent, including making it easier for people to get connected to the internet, for instance. Why am I saying this? Simply because we have our assets in space already. We don't have heavy capex to go through, and we can deploy the networks very easily, very quickly. So in terms of time to implementation, the satellite networks are very difficult to beat, and they're probably the best choice when it comes to digitizing a continent as large as Africa.
And digitizing the continent itself, what are your plans in that regard? Because we want a digital Africa in that sense.
Absolutely. So, you know, there are two fronts on which we're working. The number one front is the video. We're transitioning from analog to digital television with, you know, Ultra HD and HD type of services, which we're helping implement in the continent. And then the other front is the data side of the business, which is what I was talking about, helping with connecting people to the internet and being able to benefit from the technological evolution and what internet has to offer. So these are the two fronts where we're working on. We're very successful because we're working with partners on the ground, talking about governments and regulators and other investors, business partners. And together with them, we're able to come up with very creative and very reliable solutions which enable us to bring digital television to a much larger audience than other infrastructure would be able to do in the same time and with the same amount of money. So that's what we're doing, and we're bringing additional space capacity over Africa. We are very active on the ground. As I was saying, we have offices around the continent, definitely here in South Africa, but also in Ethiopia, in Western Africa, in Ghana and in Nigeria. And we're also very much present in Eastern Africa, in Nairobi. So we're covering the continent from east to west and south to north with our services, with our team of people working with partners on the ground every day to make sure that we can increase the level of digitization of the continent and the connectedness of people with the internet.
Okay, but talking from your experience, seeing that you're a global company in itself, what is lacking in Africa in terms of it being a digitally vibrant?
That's, you know, again, I'm referring to the discussion we had yesterday with the various stakeholders, and one of the problem, I think, if not the most important problem, is the time it takes for governments and regulators to make decisions and also to make up their mind about what is the right way to go. Given what's at stake in Africa, you know, the number of people we're talking about, large size population, large size countries, there's a lot at stake, and it's very important that governments and regulators understand how this environment and this sector actually functions, because that will enable them to make the better decisions quicker. And so at this point I would say that Africa is still lacking that capability. And companies like us, we like to work with them to help them understand, what are the better choices, what's most beneficial for them and the African populations in terms of digitization. And I would say that's really something that needs to be worked on, and we're trying to help, we're trying to work hand in hand with them. And slowly but surely we're getting there, but it's definitely taking more time than in other parts of the world.
While predictions have it that around 62% of Africans won't have access to mobile internet by 2020, one of the companies putting a hand in curbing this is Myriad Connect. Its general manager, Fabien Delanaud, says Africa is already making moves in becoming a global digital leader.
Well, the operation space in Africa is very, very interesting. Obviously, the technology is moving on, and we've seen that people are moving to mobile internet. But mobile internet is not there yet. So there's a whole range of technology that's available today to cater for everybody.
Speaking about mobile internet, we're the most continent without internet connectivity. What are the barriers in this?
Oh, the barriers to mobile internet are very clear. It's connectivity, it's affordability, and it's education. But there are other technologies today that will give digital inclusion to people who don't have access to mobile data.
What needs to be done to get Africa connected?
So to get Africa connected will take time, and it will take for governments, for mobile operators, for technology partners to all work together to make it happen. But we think affordability is still going to be a barrier, and therefore we need to use all the technologies that are available out there to make it happen.
And what will it take for Africa to be a global digital leader, for example?
Well, I think Africa is there today. So if you look at things like mobile money today, Africa is the #1 market for mobile money. It doesn't need mobile data. Using technology like USSD that's available out there, like that's what people use today. In Africa, there's a lot of entrepreneurship and ambition in Africa, and it's one of the leaders in things like mobile financial services, absolutely, in the world.
Many panel discussions and separate co-located networking exhibitions form part of this high-level conference program. One of the key focuses here is prioritizing digital inclusion to create equal access to information for everybody in Africa. Big tech brands from around the world form part of these discussions. Huawei has been in the African continent for the last 18 years. They recently partnered with African mobile giants MTN and have a special launch in store for us today. Roland Sladik is their communication director who will tell us more about this launch. Let's go inside. Sladik tells us about the company's new partnership with telecoms giant MTN and its future prospects in Africa.
Well, first of all, Huawei is very excited to be here at AfricaCom. It's like every year, and it's sort of a major meeting for us with our customers, with our partners. And that's why Huawei, together with MTN, decided to launch some really exciting solutions. So the first Africa-wide solutions. So 3 solutions that Huawei will be launching. A smart meter solution, a smart fridge, and a connected car solution which allows insurance companies sort of to follow what drivers are doing and sort of to assess their driver behavior better and sort of to adjust their insurance policy to these drivers.
Can you tell us about the partnership with MTN? How did that come about?
Sure. I mean, so Huawei has been working for a long time with different telecommunication operators all over Africa, and in South Africa in particular. So MTN is a very old and good customer of ours and a very, very strong partner of ours. So that's why Huawei, together with MTN, decided sort of to launch this narrow broadband IoT solution, which are sort of specific machine-to-machine solutions, not just in South Africa, but sort of for the whole African continent.
And what's different about these solutions that you're launching here today?
Well, the smart meter, it's a solution which allows consumers to measure water consumption, but also to communicate to the water companies these informations. So it's a really interesting way of sort of assessing how much water you consume, but also so for the consumer to know how much water they consume, but also how much money they pay, and as such to readjust their water consumption. So it's a really innovative way of sort of better managing your budget and also your time and energy.
Okay, was there a specific reason for launching it here today at AfricaCom?
I mean, AfricaCom is for the whole industry one of the really important meetings which brings all customers together, partners together. And so you have all the major telecommunications stakeholders here at AfricaCom in Cape Town present. So that's why we decided to launch it here among sort of our peers and partners and customers, sort of these three major solutions at AfricaCom. And again, these are not just South African solutions, but these are really solutions for the whole African continent. And we hope that there will be more things to come in the next couple of months and years in these fields.
We're talking about the African continent over here, and we understand that connectivity is not one of the priorities of the continent, in the sense that it's not that available, it's not too much available in the continent. How are you planning to roll out these solutions? Are you planning to roll them out in South Africa, or will they be available in the continent as a whole?
I mean, the smart thing about these smart solutions, if I may say, is that you don't use a lot of spectrum. You just use very, very little spectrum, hence narrow band solution. And that helps actually roll out more easily. So the investment you have to put into it is not very heavy. So it's not like rolling out a huge 3G or 4G generation networks, which is much more heavily heavily investment intensive. This is not. So I think it's something which can be rolled out in the next couple of months and years, much more easily all over Africa. But I agree with you. I think connectivity needs to be more heavily rolled out in many African markets. I think Huawei does it already in sort of many African markets. I mean, today 4G is emerging more and more in Africa, and Huawei itself builds something like 70% of all 4G networks all over Africa. So we're really at the forefront of connecting Africa and connecting the African consumer.
And it's not only connectivity that's a major issue in the African continent. We're also looking at poverty and the scarcity of money in itself. Will these be affordable solutions for the ordinary African out in rural area, or just the ordinary African in general?
Well, I mean, poverty is an important aspect, and Huawei is working on this on two different ways. I mean, first of all, we see ourselves as an African player. We have been in Africa for more than 16, 17 years, and we're hiring a lot of local talents. I mean, to date, Huawei has more than 7,000 employees, direct employees in Africa, and sort of several thousands indirect employees in and over Africa. Then, in terms of smart meters, I think it really depends. So we're working together with partners like MTN or like other partners in different markets. So it depends on the model, how they will be rolled out. But typically for the connected cars solution, for example, it will be probably be paid by insurance companies actually, who will provide them to the end user and to assess their driving behavior, the driving pattern, and to readjust their insurance policies. So it really depends. I mean, sometimes it will not be paid by the consumer, but it will be paid by the water or the insurance company. So it really depends on the business model. Each country might be different.
Okay, then just lastly, and maybe also taking us into a bit of the future for Huawei in the African continent. What are the plans to digitalize Africa even further?
So Huawei has three lines of business. I think that's important to understand. So we are building networks. As I say, today Huawei connects Africa. We are building something like 70% of the whole African LTE 4G solutions. So the future will be sort of covering more of today the main areas which are covered are metropolitan areas. So we'd like to go beyond that and to cover more parts of Africa, and I think that will come. The second aspect, what Huawei does, is building data centers and for enterprise customers. So I think this is something which will be playing a more and more important role. More and more companies, big companies, need to store their data, to manage their data in the cloud. So Huawei provides not just like the hardware, but also sort of the software sort of to run it on the cloud. The third thing that Huawei does is mobile phones. So Huawei is the third largest vendor of mobile phones worldwide. And we are very, very proud to be, for example, in South Africa, where we are one of the key mobile phone players, launching all our new models here. And with the emerging middle class in Africa, I think African market is a very, very important market for us. It grows very fast, and Huawei has the right models for these emerging African consumers. So mobile phones, cloud computing, and networks, that's what Huawei does in the future for Africa.
Stay tuned for more after the break. The French digital solutions company Gemalto is one of the companies forming part of the networking exhibitions at the conference. The Senior Vice President of Sales at Gemalto, Sherry Zamir, gives us an update on what's happening in Africa's mobile space.
A lot of people around in the show will tell you that the penetration of smartphones moving forward is very bullish. It's in markets in Africa where we look at penetration rates of 20% today. We see them being as high as 50 to 60% in the next 2 years. And one of the main reasons for that is that the price points of smartphone devices is crashing down. You can buy a smartphone device for $40 now. So when you have a feature phone user who needs to upgrade their device, more than likely they'll go to a smartphone. And when they do, they have a list of possibilities open to them. And Africa is a great place to really start building these solutions that are solving real-world problems. For example, M-Pesa. It's a mobile payment solution that showed the world how to do mobile payments. So from that perspective, Gemalto's been involved in providing these touch points in these industry sectors and then building solutions and services on top of that installed base.
Okay, as technology grows and we become more digitalized, so does the mobile space also grow, and also connectivity as well. Can you give us maybe some of the new technologies and initiatives that Gemalto has brought across to the African continent?
So we're working on solutions in M2M and IoT right from the ground up. So from providing the modules and the devices to providing the connectivity platforms and then the services. Now that has many different touch points in everyday lifestyle or digital lifestyle of a consumer, whether it's a health solution, an education solution, or a smart card for transport, payment and access and so on. And these are some of the areas that we've been working in. We see a lot of solutions coming in terms of M2M and IoT, from more complex solutions of the connected car to really health-based solutions using wearable devices. And now moving into wearable devices that can also make payments, for example. So you're able to make a payment with your watch. And these are some of the solutions that we've been working on here in Africa, and providing solutions around bridging the gap between different stakeholders in that ecosystem, from banking to government to mobile operators, whether it's to provide financial inclusion solutions or to provide solutions around smart transport. So that's what we see up and coming in Africa. That's what we're involved in. And I think it's a very good place for Gemalto to also learn about this particular idiosyncrasies of consumer behavior in Africa and build solutions catered specifically for the consumers of Africa.
Talking about bridging the gap, there's a huge gap between the poor and technology. Is Gemalto offering solutions for that poor people can access? Are these technologies that you bring across ones that normal poor African people are accessing?
I think that's one of our design principles. We're present all around the world and we provide a lot of solutions. But one thing we're keen not to do is to come to Africa and say, well, you must buy this because we did it in Tokyo and it worked really well, because it doesn't really work. Localization and adaptation are the key principles of our strategies. So what we love about Africa is that we're solving real world problems. Innovation isn't about predicting what happens in the future. Innovation many times is looking at what is happening in your day-to-day lifestyle today. For example, we're looking at solutions that are providing off-grid utilities. One of the problems that we have in rural Africa is that rural Africa is really not on the national grid. So being able to harness the power of solar technology, store it, and then be able to use a mobile network to unload and unleash that stored power to provide solutions that are cleaner for the environment, that are more cost effective, and give a sense of ownership, because at the end the entire solution becomes an asset. That means bridging the gap, as I said, and as you asked, is bringing in microfinance companies, bringing in M2M IoT companies and mobile operators to build that ecosystem. And it's Gemalto technology that drives these solutions.
The first day of the AfricaCom conference was wrapped up by leaders in Africa headline keynotes. Among the panelists was the South African Minister of Telecommunications and Postal Services, Siyabonga Cwele, and the Vice President of Facebook's Internet.org. Also forming part of the delegation was founder of Give One Project and co-founder of Acorn Lighting Africa, Fiona Niang, who was appointed by President Obama as ambassador of the US Ministry of Energy.
I want an Africa where every young person will have the same opportunity like my son El Haja in the United States. Can go to the same school and find a computer that they can connect to, have access to internet that we're talking about today, be able to build applications, be able to build those computers, Mr. Minister, that you're talking about, not for them to build it for us to bring it here, but our children here in Africa to build it for us and for our kids. This is the Africa that I want. And this is the Africa that we're working on every single day, and we're inviting each and every one of you, especially the diaspora that are watching. Because everything we've learned around the world, it's time that we bring it so it can benefit our people. How much is given, much is required. And I will close to say to you that every generation at one point has to ask, what is your calling? The most pressing questions. What will you leave behind and how you will be remembered? Not only the generation, but each and one of us should answer that question. What will we leave here when we leave Earth that will be remembered? Because Nelson Mandela, from this great country, we know what he represents. Forever he will live here. People like Dr. King, who's fought through the civil rights movement, has allowed people like Barack Obama and myself from Kaulak to do what I'm doing in America today. But who are we and what we going to leave? So Africa will be not only be for numbers and statistics and a place where we come and do business and get back to the plan and take everything back out, where our children cannot even have a clean water to drink, cannot have access to electricity, cannot have decent education, cannot have the minimum that is needed to be able to compete globally. If we cannot answer these questions, tomorrow when generations ask, we will fail them.
So I'll start with a couple of statistics. The statistics that I'm going to start with are first, the ITU now says that 28% of Africa is online. That's fantastic. So we're seeing internet penetration rising very, very steeply in Africa. The second statistic that I'm going to share is that in 2020, the average monthly consumption of a data user in Africa is going to be 14 times what it is today. So that growth is going to continue. Why is it going to continue? Because this industry has been doing great work in cooperation with governments around the world, and around Africa in particular for the Africa statistics, to bring people online. And we are going to continue to do work on our part to bring people online. As you know, Facebook's mission is to make the world more open and connected, and we have an initiative at Facebook called Internet.org that I lead, which is, our mission is to bring the half of the world who's not connected to the internet online as soon as possible. I want to talk today about one subset of Internet.org. We've got a lot of things that we do within Internet.org. We have our initiatives with satellites, our adventures or misadventures with satellites in some cases. We have solar planes that a lot of you have probably heard about and are now flying, and will soon connect the world via solar planes with internet access. We have Free Basics, which is live in over 50 countries around the world. But this one is an idea that we had where we basically said, what if we could get the ability for any entrepreneur in any city around the world to bring Wi-Fi to their community and to set up a small business selling Wi-Fi to their community? Could that work? And that's what Express Wi-Fi is. A little bit about Wi-Fi. Everybody knows what Wi-Fi is. There's kind of two ways that most phones can connect to the internet. Way number one is a cellular connection, 2G, 3G, 4G. The second way, unlicensed spectrum, is Wi-Fi. Most phones around the world now are Wi-Fi compatible. So if we could bring Wi-Fi to everywhere in the world, what would that look like? Our focus here was a sustainable economic model. That's the core of Express Wi-Fi. One that can pay for the operational expense of running the Wi-Fi network, one that can pay for the CapEx that it requires to set up that network. So that's the very core of what we're doing with Express Wi-Fi. Let me talk a little bit about what the ecosystem around Express Wi-Fi looks like, and then I'll get into more detail of what the network itself starts to look like. So first of all, the ecosystem. What is Facebook doing? We're building tools and technology to allow ISPs to set up and manage these networks and to allow retailers to sell to end users internet connectivity. The ISPs are the people who set up, manage the networks. They also, any regulatory compliance that needs to take place, they are responsible for that. We partner with ISPs, we partner with big MNOs for Express Wi-Fi. Then there's the retailer. The retailer to me is the key to this entire program. This is a small business owner in any town, in Africa, anywhere in the world. And their responsibility is actually to set up a Wi-Fi hotspot, pick the location. They know their town best. They're going to know where people are, where people want to use Wi-Fi. Their responsibility is to do marketing of Wi-Fi. So they go out and tell people the Wi-Fi is available at this location.
As the first day wraps up, it is evident that a digitalized African continent is not a far-fetched dream. The second day of the AfricaCom conference dives in deeper in tackling the continent's connectivity issues, so be sure to tune in.